Okay, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this technical symposium, which has been well organized by the SPE Lagos section, entire board, and different committees that have worked tirelessly over the past few weeks to put together a technical symposium, which I believe that has an apt theme focused on unpacking crude oil theft in Nigeria, effect on the economy, and of course, we'll also be looking at the sustainable solutions. We know fully well that oil and gas is a key aspect of our economy here in Nigeria and, of course, across Africa as a whole. We know that petroleum products are a major source of our energy supply and make up over 85% of the federal government's export revenue. However, in the past few years, we see that Nigeria's crude oil production has consistently declined, resulting in the country's inability to meet its monthly OPEC production quota. This production decline has been attributed to a variety of reasons, including its insufficient investment in the industry, pipeline vandalization, and crude oil theft. And of course, crude oil theft is something that we have heard consistently over the past few weeks and, of course, months. So we're here today to unpack some of the issues with regards to crude oil theft, and at the end of the day, provide sustainable solutions that can help policymakers, that can help investors, and of course, operators across the energy, oil, and gas value chain. So I welcome you all to this symposium once again. Thank you so much for joining. Thanks for your patience as well. Thank you to all the dignitaries and all the industry experts that have joined this session. We hope that you can also contribute actively to the discussions that we'll be having today on this really apt theme, which impacts us all as individuals, as experts, as investors, and practitioners in the oil and gas industry. So before we proceed, looking at the safety briefing, we know it's a virtual event and most of us have joined in from several locations. I would like to indulge us to remain aware of our environment, be situationally aware. Please, if you are driving, we'll indulge you to park somewhere and be ready to listen, because as we know, this is an apt topic and will require your full attention as well as your safety as well as you listen to this and of course contribute. Also, we are in the Ember months. Security awareness is very critical in this period, so please be aware of your environment as well and take security as paramount in your daily dealings. Before I proceed, I'd like to introduce myself as LSA Ezenwanne, the membership chair for the SPE Lagos section board, and I will be your master of ceremony for today. I hope that we can make this event and symposium as engaging as possible. So next, we will take the national anthem before we proceed with a welcome remark by the SPE Lagos section chair in the person of Priscilla Enweren. But first, the national anthem. Thank you so much for that. So to carry on with the rest of the program, I welcome Mrs. Priscilla Enwere, the Lagos section chair. Priscilla, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Alessia. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this symposium on the critical subjects that impacting our industry. You're most welcome. I welcome in a special way our distinguished guests, Mr. Abdurrahman Mijenyawa, Engineer Joe Markwe, Engineer Tony Obigwe, Engineer Festus Tiger, Mr. Dennis Amakri, and Engineer Alaude Adebowale. Crude theft is impacting our economy as a nation, and so I thank you in a special way for taking time to come talk to us today about the anatomy of crude oil theft, its impact on our economy, and to give insights about potential solutions to solving this issue. I have no doubt that the session is going to be very engaging, and we will leave here with better understanding than we had when we joined. To everyone else who's joined the call, I welcome you and I thank you. I encourage you to please continue to engage SB Lagos section on all social media platforms so you can get firsthand updates on all our programs. Thank you again for joining and enjoy the session. Alessia, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla. I think you've said it all and nothing more to be said there in terms of welcoming. For the next agenda item, we'll welcome Engineer Felix Obike, who is the chairman, SPE Nigerian Council, to give us an opening remark for this really good topic and event that we have here today. Engineer Felix, over to you.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you loud and clear.
And can you still see me?
And we see you as well.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Yeah, welcome to this symposium, everyone. Thank you for inviting me, SP Lagos session. Thank you, Madam Priscilla, and all your board members. You know, when you actually called me on this, I was thinking I was going to be a panelist, but thank God, it would have been a lot more for me to be a panelist. Yeah, but then, as the chairman of the Nigerian Council, I'll just give you my welcome address. Yes, heads of government, managing directors, and chief executives of companies, corporations, the chairman board of trustees, council members, and all members of SP Nigerian Council. I especially want to recognize SP Lagos section board members for putting this together. The academia, esteemed media representatives, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. The Society of Petroleum Engineers is living by its mission and vision in Nigeria, as we all have witnessed in the various knowledge sharing centers and events of the council and section levels. At least this is one of them from Lagos section. We are gathered online together today to beam and spotlight on a very critical and sensitive subject matter in our country today. We all know how sensitive crude theft is and the impact of it in Nigerian economy. And I believe we're going to discuss and grab a lot more. And of course, how to solve this. That's the main thing. Sorry, they're dragging me into another meeting. Yeah, let me continue. Our vision in SP has handed down to us in Nigeria from SP International is mainly to advance the oil and gas community's ability to meet the world's energy demands in a safe, environmentally responsible and sustainable manner, in quotes, environmental and sustainable manner. Considering what I have just mentioned as our vision, it is clear that as a professional organization, SPE had the foresight of possible challenges, such as the one faced by Nigeria today, the one we're going to talk about today. I want to commend the board members of SP section, Lagos section, for pulling these resources together for us to have a conversation or conversations on crude oil theft in Nigeria and its ripple effects. Also, I want to specially thank those invited guest speakers, the panelists who are amidst your tight schedules, thought it worthwhile to honor the invitation of the SP Lagos section to share their thoughts on these burning issues. To everyone, please take your time to participate fully, ask questions, and share your knowledge with others. This is the aim of today's gathering, and of course, it is embodied in SP's vision, mission, and core values. Once again, I welcome you to SP Lagos section Visual Technical Symposium and wish you the most fruitful deliberations with actionable outcomes, in quotes, actionable outcomes. Stay blessed and have a fulfilled deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Felix Obike. Engineer Felix Obike, like I mentioned earlier, is the chairman, SPE Nigerian Council. Thank you so much for that charge there on coming up with actionable steps that we can take on as an industry to tackle this current issue with regard to crude oil theft in our industry, and of course the sustainable solutions as well, which are critical. So without much further ado, would like to head on to the keynote presentation, and we have no other than Mr. Abdulrahman Mijinyawa, who will be taking us through on the keynote presentation. Mr. Abdulrahman is a passionate individual and collective growth. Reducing his passion, of course, focuses on reducing energy and education poverty by enhancing access to energy and quality education, by promoting the power of digital technologies to positively transform people's lives. Mr. Abdulrahman, as he's popularly known as AR, he is currently the GM Development and Subsurface, and he has led organizational growth through delivering competitive end-to-end subsurface outcomes across various project life cycles. And this covers so many aspects of project life cycle, from exploration all the way to asset operations optimization. As part of his portfolio, he has delivered about, if you put it in the Nigerian context, he has delivered about 55% of Nigeria's export gas supply, which is about 15% of Nigeria's oil production capacity, and 10% represents domestic gas supply capacity. He has bagged a chemical engineering degree from the Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, and also has a degree in petroleum engineering from the prestigious Imperial College London. Like I mentioned, his portfolio has also put him in a position where he has led asset development within Shell Nigeria, and of course across the industry, including the Netherlands. He has led some roles, held some roles as technical planning manager within Shell, and also overseeing the operationalization of digital strategy and technology in the deployment for Shell companies in Nigeria. So without much further ado, I'd like to welcome you, AR, for the keynote presentation. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Alice. Please confirm you can hear me and you can see me.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear, and we see you.
Excellent. Thank you. And I expect that great. Thanks again, Alice, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining from. I would kindly request to stand existing protocols and thank the SPE for this opportunity to share some thoughts on this very auspicious topic. Many appreciations to the SPE Lagos chapter and also the SPE Nigeria Council. So unpacking crude oil theft in Nigeria, effect on the economy and sustainable solutions. I'll be sharing a few thoughts, and I also am, very keenly looking forward to listening and learning and hearing from others as well. I think Ella just shared the disclaimer there. Important that I flashed that because I'm making this presentation in my personal capacity as an SPE member. So I would like everybody to take note of that, please. So quickly, if you go to the next slide, Ella. I'll talk a bit on background of this phenomenon or menace, depending on what adjective you choose. I give a bit of context and also enablers. Then dig a bit deeper into the root causes and the impact, and share some thoughts around potential solutions. And then round up with a few thoughts as well before handover. So. Again, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really happy that we're having this much-needed conversation, finally, bringing together stakeholders to discuss and exchange ideas and think together. It's a really vital step towards creating sustainable solutions, for what threatens our common prosperity as a nation, and also threatens our existence as a viable industry for the future. Make no mistake about it. The menace of crude oil theft is a real threat to all of our existence, as I mentioned, both nationally, but also industry-wide. The vastness of crude theft in Nigeria is a factor in the decline of our dear nation's standing, from leading producer of oil in Africa to the third position, now behind Angola and Libya. And even for the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries list, we are now 8th. And in August, OPEC's monthly oil market report showed that our production as a country stood at about 1 million barrels, which is just about 50% of the quota that OPEC allocated to us. And if we step back, crude oil receipts at our oil terminals, specifically if I talk to the Bonny terminal, for example, gone down from typical 98-99%. At the wells, which we used to record, in the 90s, to less than 10% in the first quarter of this year. As a matter of fact, there was a date in February where we had literally 0 receipts into the Bonny. And this forced many companies to shut in production. And of course, many companies are scrambling and exploring options for shipping their products to the terminal. Oil theft in the country has been going on for over 2 decades, so it's not entirely a new phenomenon, but the dimension and rate it has assumed in recent times is unprecedented. Nigeria as a country is losing potential revenue from oil production of some 600 barrels per day, 600,000 barrels per day, depending on where you get statistics from. And if you assume that that's true, at $80 per barrel, that's almost $50 million per barrel in lost per day, in lost revenue. And of course, you agree that this if nothing else does, this calls for concerted efforts and dialogue, importantly, to find sustainable solutions, to curb this menace. So if I move on to a bit of context and enablers, in the Niger Delta region, where most of the exploration and exploitation of oil production is done, typically, main means of transportation is through a pipeline network. It's 4,400 kilometers wide, spreading across east, west, and even a bit of shallow water. But this network now is extremely vulnerable. Additionally, most of our oil facilities are located in remote areas with little or no security infrastructure, and this provides an opportunity for criminals to breach our pipelines, and take the crude for sale, to the international black market or for local unconventional artisanal refining. Then again, the storms of the Niger Delta mangrove forests make crude oil theft possible in 2 ways, if I maybe dig in a bit deeper. So firstly, or two major ways. Firstly, offenders bore holes into many portions of vulnerable pipelines and then siphon the oil onto floating storages such as propelled wooden boats and towed barges. And then they use these to transfer the stolen product either further offshore onto larger ocean carrier vessels, or they take them to local artisanal refineries. But then secondly, you have another set which basically inserts hoses directly or illegal connections directly onto the pipelines, basically siphon the product directly into barges that then navigate shallow waters, and transfer this to larger vessels that are anchored offshore. So these are kind of like the main ways through which this menace is perpetrated. And then looking at a bit of the root causes and impact, they're kind of, you say, three main causes that I would like to outline here. One is market availability. So the presence of local and international markets for stolen crude incentivizes and motivates these theft syndicates. In some of the remote areas of the Delta, there persists a scarcity of refined products, but where it's available is usually at much higher prices compared to what you find in major towns and cities. So this has now resulted in rampant artisanal refining to meet the demand in these localities. Secondly, socio-political factors. So, defective political economics of resource exploitation and agitations for resource control is also a factor. And this results in many of the persons involved in this menace actually denying any responsibility for their actions or even justifying their behavior and believe that they do not cause any harm, or they are just taking what's theirs. So a bit of a vicious cycle there. And then thirdly, of course, is corruption. So the endemic corruption in the polity and the lack of consequences for perpetrators, of this menace has led to, emboldened others, and increased the theft volumes. And then what you have is a vicious cycle where monies, that are made from the stolen crude are now used to fund illegal activities, which then further worsens the crime situation in the country. It's also very popular to talk about unemployment and poor standards of living. Definitely these exacerbate the menace of crude oil theft. But research has actually shown that crude oil theft is not entirely motivated by poor economic conditions, and that there's a real criminal element to it. So these are some of the root causes. And when we talk about impact, you look at that on an economic, social, and environmental level. So economically, you've got the government, the operating companies, and the host communities. But the government, the most significant impact is the loss of revenue, tax revenues and royalties, to the government, and then, of course, by extension, to the larger population. And with our heavy dependence as a nation on revenues from crude oil, many estimates put that at 80% of total export revenues. Crude oil theft causes a significant shortfall of cash available to the government for development activities in the country, and then that further exacerbates the already existing infrastructure gap that we have. For the operating companies, loss of revenue from crude oil sales affects profitability, especially relative to our counterparts elsewhere in the world or in the region, in the subcontinent. And then additionally, you've got cost of oil spills remediation, from these crude theft points. And of course, attendant security exposure, pose additional concerns for companies and additional burden, to operations. For the host communities, what you have is, this menace has led to, many companies exiting their operations, and of course, then that goes with many allied services. Or at best, what you have is reduced level of activity by many of the companies, and then what you have, whereas the host communities already suffer because the government can't afford to provide infrastructure, the little employment and other benefits that they get from these operations then also disappear, with this lower or exited operations. So it's a multi-layered impact economically. Socially, we've got increasing number of out-of-school youth due to involvement in criminal activities. And of course, the lack of provision of social amenities, in the polity, which then goes back to, the limited resources available to government, makes that even worse. Then, of course, you have internal population displacement, because of security concerns when you have security agencies clashing with the criminal gangs. And sometimes, in tough wars between the criminal gangs themselves. So, that significantly affects the community socially. Environmentally, most spills tend to spread over wide areas, destroying crops and agriculture, through contamination of groundwater and soils. And of course, people in the affected areas routinely complain about health issues, including breathing and skin lesions, and even some forms of cancer. So the impacts are, are varied and very, very far-reaching. So maybe then if we switch a bit to solution mode, I would share, some thoughts around, 5 or 6 potential areas, not exhaustive by any stretch of imagination, but I think relevant to the conversation. The approach has to be multi-pronged. No single solution can work in isolation. So first of all, you talk about community engagement and advocacy. That's where we must continue to build goodwill with the community and local authorities. So for example, the SPDC JV sponsors a radio program called Canvas, Niger Delta Roundtable. I think it's a daily program, which brings professionals from the region to sensitize, the general population on the dangers and impact of crude oil theft. There's also the anti-vandalism campaign that's targeted at communities, which helps them to see themselves as true stakeholders. And these forums help to create awareness, disseminate information, and empower the people, and hopefully dissuade young people from being involved in criminal activities. But definitely we need to do even more from other players, so other JVs and other operators. Additionally, I believe that the full implementation of the Host Community Development Trust, the HCDT, by the PIA, should improve the positive impact of our operations within host communities, and it presents a real opportunity to try to reverse this negative trend. The second one is on collaboration with government security agencies. So to improve on consequent management and then increase the deterrence to the criminals, we cannot overemphasize the criticality of close collaboration between the government security agencies and operating companies and even communities. Now, most operators tend to place surveillance vendors on their facilities and on their pipeline right-of-ways to report, any breaches. However, the responsibility to apprehend and prosecute criminals, has to remain with the government security agencies. Therefore, accountability and transparency from all parties will positively impact the efforts to curb this menace. And furthermore, providing adequate protection and incentives to whistleblowers should complement the intelligence gathering capabilities of both operators and the government security agencies. Thirdly is government and political reform. The government needs to take decisive actions to improve the security infrastructure and provide incentives to investors in the upstream sector. To address, for example, to address the challenge of scarcity of refined crude oil in some of the areas, we could do a lot more modular refineries, standardized refineries. I mean, you have companies like Walter Smith taking the lead here. Maybe more of such efforts can help to meet some of that local demand and hopefully then diminish the market for the illegally refined products. Fourth, you have education and awareness. The general populace beyond just the communities needs to be continuously educated on the impact of crude oil theft on the economy, the environment, and on our health. And this education should also make clear, what the penalties for defaulters will be. So hopefully that makes it more transparent what the consequences are for perpetrating these acts. Number 5, we need to strengthen the legal framework, so a clearer framework, for prompt investigation of discovery of illegal pipelines, publishing the names of those suspected to be involved and ensuring that they are brought to justice. And that, in fact, the proceeds from the crime are fully recovered should provide some much needed transparency to curb the menace and show people that, these kind of activities do not pay. And of course, you've got technology solutions. I am a firm believer in the use of technology to solve complex issues. However, we also need to stay, even with the technology, ahead of perpetrators, as they also constantly evolve and adapt to all the technologies. And also when we bring these technologies, we need to innovate and make it contextual within our local peculiarities and circumstances. For older assets, the opportunities may be limited to harden them, technologically. But for new assets, there are many opportunities that can help us mitigate exposure to theft. So, for example, the intruder detection system, which is typically installed on wells and pipelines, has proved to be effective in deterring criminals, by highlighting the operating companies and government security agencies. But also, we do need to improve the response time, as sometimes, we do not get there in time before the damage is done. Of course, use of drones as well helps to quickly detect illegal operations along and all the right of way. And then thirdly, I think with the increasing number of producers into the export line, so with the various portfolio actions by the various companies and ownership of various blocks changing hands, we will also need a much more robust metering system, so including LACTs and auto samplers, which will help improve measurement accuracy and then more precisely identify areas of potential losses so that we can focus our efforts. Of course, and I believe these technologies can then help detect trends, determine high volume theft clusters, and gain insights, of links between, say, environmental and social circumstances. So, for example, are there particular areas that are prone to theft at particular times or particular seasons? All of this kind of intelligence can help to channel the limited surveillance resources that we have to where to make the most impact. So these are some of the proposed solutions, and I think that kind of brings me to the end, end of this keynote. But maybe just before I go, a few takeaways. The delayed response, that we've exhibited as a country in covering this threat over such a long time, has resulted to what is now essentially an out of control organized crime syndicate, if you ask me. The unprecedented scale and magnitude of this problem in Nigeria has caused significant negative impacts to the economy and the image of Nigeria. And this image is critical, to attracting investment. And so, my charge is that we must all therefore act with the utmost sense of urgency to implement these solutions and others as well, so that we can restore the economic fortunes of our country. It's a Herculean task, no doubt, but one that I believe is surmountable if we all work together. So I think on that note, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to share some of my thoughts, and I'm happy to continue further deliberations. Back to you.
All right, thank you so much, AR, for that keynote presentation. I think it somewhat brings all of us to at least basic understanding on the menace that is in crude oil theft within Nigeria. You've talked about the impacts on the economy, the impact on environment, and of course the social impact on communities that are most impacted where these crude oil theft is being done. We've looked at the root causes, the fact that for me, the scarcity of refined crude seems to be one of the one of the root causes is the learning for me, and I'm hoping that we all learn this as well and be part of the next set of discussions that will be going on through the panel session. So now, thank you so much, and next we'll be introducing the moderator who will basically take us through on the rest of the discussions, taking on some of the key insights that we have gotten from AR's keynote presentation. And hopefully, if you do have any questions for AR, he'll also be joining the panel session as well. Please, let's feel free to post in our questions in the chat box, and the moderator will take that on as part of the Q&A during the discussions. Right, so introducing the moderator. The moderator for today is the renowned Mr. Joseph Nwakwe, who was once the Council Chairman for Society of Petroleum Engineers Nigerian Council. He is a partner at Zera Advisory and Consulting, and he has over 30 years of oil and gas industry experience. He holds a master's as well as a bachelor's degree in petroleum engineering from the University of Technology, Owerri, and also an MBA from the Lincoln University in the US. He has a wealth of experience both in the private and public sector, which cuts across several disciplines in the oil and gas industry. He has also served as a special advisor, policy and regulation to the Honorable Minister of State, Petroleum Resources between the years 2017 and 2019. Of course, he's a renowned author and has authored several papers in the industry, focusing on Nigerian gas market development, oil and gas policy, industry governance and regulation, and has contributed to the development of new national oil and gas and fiscal policies. No wonder he is the right person to take us through on the discourse of today. I would like to welcome Mr. Joe Nwakwe. The floor is yours for the next, I believe, over an hour to take us through on the discussion around the effects of crude oil theft in our economy and, of course, the sustainable solutions. And we're looking forward to an engaging session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Alessia. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Welcome to this session. Thank you, Abdul, for such a very detailed keynote. I think it covered essentially the entire gamut of issues around crude theft. So I think we've got an hour, so we're going to move very fast. There are a lot of issues to cover. I've made some copious notes here on the issues that Abdul raised. And I would like to welcome the panelists. I see it's a very star-studded panel here. Oganto Anthony is here. Welcome, sir. And Mr. Alawude, we can see you. If you could just put your, so that we can at least put a face to the name. And Oga Dennis Amakri. So you can see we have very good coverage. Mr. Amakri is a security expert, so we'll be able to get the security implication. In fact, listening to Abdul, I said I was going to start with Mr. Amakri. So Abdul gave a sense that there is about $48 million daily lost to theft. And the first thing that came to mind is, if only 10 people had access to $48 million every day, what is the security implication of that for the Nigerian state? I mean, that's a number close to anywhere between $10 billion a year to $19 billion a year. That is a lot of money. It's far more money than probably all the states in the Southwest together. And my big concern is, what does that say to the stability of the state if individuals within the state will have access to such a catch of money? I'll start with you, Mr. Macri. I think you're muted.
I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I thank everybody that is here. Thank you for inviting me. I have spent some years in the oil industry, and both in Nigeria and of course in Angola and other parts of Africa. And the one of Nigeria concerns me a lot because we have, allowed it to fester. And of course, because of either the major issue that the keynote speaker, AR, has mentioned here, which I think is the major issue, which is corruption. I think corruption has pulled us back to where we are. I'll give you a little insight. Where before the Niger Delta militancy, we were producing about 2.5 million barrels a day. 2.5 million barrels a day. Then at the peak of the militancy, 2006 to be very precise, I remember I was a security manager to an oil company, and we were talking to the OPTS oil and gas MDs at that time. And of course, they were worried that the 2.5 million dropped all the way down to 1.4. In fact, the real figures goes down to about 600,000 barrels a day. But after the amnesty program, we picked up to 2 million. And then, of course, currently, for one reason or the other, in fact, because of oil theft, we have come to find ourselves producing. In August, the figures were about 972,000 barrels a day. And then, of course, right now we have an estimated theft of about 500. Of course, AR said it's 600, but, depending on where you're looking, because I still believe that there are many, many sources of loss that we have not even looked at. So I think I'll leave it here while we'll continue with others, and then we can go into the nitty-gritty later. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. I think you raised another issue, which is the issue of what exactly is the price. If you listen to, especially the government officials, I mean, the numbers vary from as low as 150,000 barrels a day to as high as 600,000 barrels a day. We've done some work over time in these areas. I'm not sure what we can. So it depends on methodology. How do you establish what that loss is? If a line is shorting because people tampered with it, not all of that volume is stolen. Okay, so there are a lot of issues around establishing what is the right number. But beyond that, I'll go to Oga Tony. In the past, we've had challenges supplying the refineries with crude produced in Nigeria. And we could not get it by pipeline to a refinery in Nigeria, where we've had to get contractors to use security badges to move crude from the source to Port Harcourt refinery specifically, and I think Warri at some point. How do you, from the refining perspective, how does that impact your operations and your profitability as somebody who is running the refinery?
Thank you very much, Joe, for that question. And I want to thank the Society of Petroleum Engineers for inviting me to participate in this panel discussion. It's dealing with a topic which is indeed very, very important. As AR mentioned, it impacts on the ability of the government to even fund its budget. When you consider that oil used to account for up to 80% of the crude oil or of the foreign exchange inflow, and then you put that in perspective with the statement that the CBN governor made just a few days ago, I was actually shocked that within the recent few months, no revenue has come into the government's reserves from oil production. That is terrible. Therefore, what we are talking about is serious. It's really serious. And before I go to deal specifically with the question that Joe asked me, I want to say that the security implications are massive. Like you have identified, somebody with access to $48 million per day can do a lot of damage to a nation because he has access to acquiring armaments and things to secure his loot and to compromise a lot of security agencies and forces who might be deployed to check his activity. And we don't want to allow this continue. Sadly, this is not a new thing. Now, to go to the question that Joe asked me specifically, some persons may not be aware of it, but in actual fact, the difficulty or the inability to deliver crude oil successfully to the refineries is one of the reasons that got the refineries to the situation they are now, where actually no refinery is operating. I have been invited to several fora where I shared the history of petroleum refining in the country. And many people who are alive today are actually unaware that Nigeria used to produce all the products that were being consumed in this country. From 1965 all the way till 2000, we were producing all the products we were consuming in this nation. In fact, by the time the Port Harcourt refinery was commissioned in 1989, we started exporting. So the inability to deliver crude oil to the refinery is what has brought the refineries, is a major contributor to the refineries not being able to operate. Because a refinery is an entity that needs to run continuously. And if you take a refinery that has a capacity like Port Harcourt refinery of 150,000 barrels per day, and you are only able to deliver half or less than half of that, then the refinery cannot run sustainably. Let me take two specific examples. Warri Refinery was being supplied by ship. When I became the group executive director in 2012, we were delivering crude oil to Warri Refinery by ship. Now, the actual margin, refining margin, at the best of times in those days was $4 per barrel. But it was costing us $7 per barrel simply to deliver the crude oil to the refinery. So you are already dead in the water, like the Americans will say. Your profitability is out of the window. So when we got to a situation where we now needed to do the same for Port Harcourt refinery, I decided that we should go out for competitive bidding so as to bring down the costs of delivering the crude oil to the refinery. And we had a situation where I did my own due diligence with my sources outside the country, and we arrived at the conclusion that we could actually deliver the crude oil to the refinery at somewhere between $3 to $4 per barrel, instead of the $7 per barrel that it was costing us. Unfortunately, several entrenched interests were determined to frustrate any efforts to put a more sustainable crude oil delivery in place. And a lot of pressure was brought on me from the government circles, from security circles, to allow what was on at that time to continue. And I refused. And that resulted in a lot of implications. But I decided that if I could not do what was the right thing to do, then there was no point my remaining on that seat. And I voluntarily disengaged from that position by December of 2013. So the issue of corruption is a major issue. And Mr. Dennis Amakiri has talked about, I think as we go on in this discussion, we will deal more with these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was quite insightful. So crude theft has had a very huge impact on the ability of the industry, whether it's the midstream, the downstream, to operate profitably. There's no gainsaying that. Now I will switch gears a little bit to talk about what it has. We've identified the financial implications. We've identified the security implications. Now let's talk a bit more on the environment. Whenever these things happen, the environment takes a beating. So over and above what you might consider as operational levels of spill and all that, this theft, because it's being done by people who, for the most part, are not versed in doing things safely, has tended to destroy the environment far beyond what is acceptable. I will go to Mr. Alawode to share his thoughts on the implications for the environment.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you, SP, for this opportunity that you have given to me to speak on this very cogent and important issue. As a player in the industry, and permit me to use this expression, as somebody that is in the trenches, and as it relates to the pipeline and the right of way. And this issue of crude oil theft. We look at the issue more of as a loss of revenue to the country, but it goes beyond that. These people, when they carry out this action, the after effect is more to the environment, because at the end of the day, you would have to spend more to carry out remediation of the environment. Not only that, the crops are affected, whereby the farmer at this point in time would have lost a lot of revenue that he may have been able to generate for himself. Not only that, sea life are affected. Likewise, those that depend on that source of revenue also would have been battered. They too will lose their revenue, their source of livelihood. So when we look at this issue holistically, the environment take most of the batching as a result of this very activity. Likewise, what we see in the field varies a lot. And I would like to just state this. I think most of these people that are into this activity, at the back of their mind, I don't think they are considerate of the environment, neither are they considerate of about people that generate their livelihood from all this activity, because once they are after what they intend to get, every other interest is put at the background. So we find ourselves in a situation where we lose revenue as a country. we lose revenue as an organization. On the flip side, people that are carrying out their normal day-to-day activity are indirectly affected. When we aggregate all these losses together, it is huge, very, very huge, because we only put numbers to the crude that we lose. By the time we start putting numbers to the effects on the environment, start putting numbers to the losses experienced by the individuals that carry out one trade or another from that same environment, we find out it's a multiplier effect of a single action of some individuals. So when we are looking at a solution to this issue, we need to sit down and carry out an holistic evaluation of the multiplier effects and how we can try as much as possible to mitigate this effect. I feel, let me just stop at this point. Maybe I've been able to speak a bit to the issue as it relates to the environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Okay, is Mr. Festus online?
Oh, yes, I'm with you.
Okay, so it would be nice to see your face too.
All right, thank you.
Yes. So you go next. So we've talked about the environment as well and what it means. And I understand you run a crude pipeline system. Can you give us a sense of how much effective, if I may use that word, has the security agencies been in trying to help you curtail the activities of these thieves? How, in your view, do you consider the response you get from the security agencies adequate or appropriate? And if indeed it's not, is there something that the industry as a whole can do to ensure that we help them do their job better?
All right. Thank you. Good morning, Paul, once again. Speaking on existing protocol, crude oil theft has a lot of effects on the oil and gas industry, most especially the pipeline section, where we are responsible for movement of this crude from one point to another. Speaking on experience, so that is where we should learn from. My organization is more of a private organization. So we know how this has affected us in so many ways, but we have gone a step further to build on our own security plan, and we have our engagement with the community. So with our strategy in protecting our pipeline and taking up the responsibility on ensuring the safety of our pipeline, we have gone a step further, and then the community are fully involved in ensuring that the pipeline, their responsibility, and will create incentives. Though in few occasions we've had a number of intrusion into our pipeline, which has affected the pipeline performance, the integrity. It has also impacted on the environment as well. So pipeline theft generally has its own effect in operation. Few times we've had that. It has also shut down production for that period, loss of revenue. So in our own move, we've gone a step further. We have our JTF on standby, which the company takes charge of. We have our intelligence system that also monitors our pipeline as well. So when there is an alert at any point in time, they mobilize at every point in time to that point, and then there's a very quick response. And that has helped us on our own part as a private sector in protecting our pipeline. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'm not just going to let you go quickly. So what I'm hearing from you is you have essentially provided or at least funded some security arrangement that enables quick response whenever you have triggers within your system.
Exactly.
Is that something you think the industry should replicate across board? And if that's the case, how would you think that can be achieved?
Okay, yes. From experience, it depends on the terrain. We operate on land. It's easier to manage and secure your pipeline on land than in the swampy area. So the terrain has an effect and also determines how safe your pipe could be. Yes. It's also an advice to the sector as well. It's something they should adopt. That is where privatization comes in into the sector. Absolute privatization comes in, where individuals, private companies can take in their little section and take full responsibility, study the trend, and know the best measure to take in protecting that small section of their pipeline or their facility. So absolute privatization is something that should be encouraged in this industry, whereby we shouldn't just leave this to the government alone. An oil company operating in a small community should look how they can engage their community to the full. Looking at the right of way surveillance team, the community members should be fully involved as well. Incentives should be there at the end of the year. If there is no intrusion in this section of your community, you have this incentive at the end of the year. Most times you get information from the community members. Oh, there is a truck passing by. Send your JTF across this section and that section. We go about apprehending these guys even before they get into the pipeline. So it's something that the industry should adopt. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will switch gears now back to AR. I know you're a technology buff, and you hinted on how we might be able to use technology to address these issues. Could you share your thoughts, especially onshore, because our onshore assets are essentially a set of matured assets, and most of them were not retrofitted for this technology deployment. So in some sense, it's going to cost so much to put in place the technology. What are your thoughts on how this might be accomplished?
Well, thanks, Joe. And a really good question. And I think just like you see with technology, a lot, there's always the apprehension: will it work? Will it not work? So there's always a risk that of some sunk cost. But I think ultimately, if we look at this as a long game in the long term, I think technology tends to always pay off. More specifically, to your question, even for the oil assets, there are a few things we can still do. So like I mentioned, the metering is one that we need to really work on. I think every operator needs to just factor that in, because if we have metering, reliable metering across the network, and then of course it's integrated either by the pipeline operator or by NUIMS, NNPC as the case might be, whoever is going to do that, then we have a credible way of knowing what comes from where, and that way we can isolate where losses are, and that's a piece of insight, that we can then use to deploy resources. So, and that's relatively easy to do in terms of metering. The technology is already available. It's going to cost some money, but it's not like very complicated technology. And then of course you have leak detection systems as well, which are easily retrofitable onto pipelines, and you can do this with different classes of meters. You can get very sophisticated and use very high precision meters, or you can use basic Coriolis meters or even clamp-on meters. The idea is that you have pressure signals at various points on the pipeline, and you use those pressure signals to do a material balance, and detect when there's a leak and possibly where it is. And this has been successfully deployed, by the way, on an old line in Nigeria. So it's very doable. So that's another one. Then of course you've got drone technology, which we can use for surveillance. That doesn't require us to retrofit any of the facilities, but it can help us to monitor the lines, monitor our wellheads, and pick up, with imaging technologies, for example, it can pick up movement even at night using infrared light, and then be able to send that data to some collation center that can then, alert the relevant authorities. And then lastly, and I think this one is probably the trickier one, is just analytics. So imagine if we're able to pull in together all of the history that we have, production history along our pipelines, along our flow lines, flow stations. We're able to then map all of the incidents that we have, the recordable incidents. So where lines have been punctured, when, by the time you put together all of that information, say over 10, 20 years, you begin to get insights that are not possible to get now. So for example, one of the things that I told people is that, and this may not be true, it's just something that you get from analytics. There may be a trend between political activities or even certain traditional events with certain theft. It's a possible correlation, but until you put that data together and then you look at it, you may not be able, humanly, it's not possible to make this conclusion. But that's one that, I think also holds quite a bit of potential. So this would be some of the thoughts that I will share, Joe.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much.
Joe, can
yes.
I interdict here, please, if you don't mind? I'm sorry, jumping the gun, but this is a subject that I really feel passionate about, because back in 2012, when I took on responsibility, that's 10 years ago, as the Group Executive Director of Refineries and Petrochemicals, I assembled a team of technology providers, and we met in Transcorp Hilton for 3 days. And I invited the then Minister of Petroleum to sit in on the opening session. And the objective of that 3-day workshop was to come up with technological solutions which could be deployed to deal with this menace. And this is 10 years ago. So this is not really new. Now, we came up with recommendations. AR has referred to quite a number of them. But after analyzing all the solutions that were put forward, something became very, very clear to me. Crude oil theft is not peculiar to Nigeria. Certain other countries have had the same problems, and they took steps, and they were able to solve it. And how did they solve it? The solution is three-pronged. Number one is installing devices on your crude oil pipelines and your product pipelines, by the way, which enable you to get back real-time feedback from the pipelines to determine what is happening on the pipelines. There are, apart from leak detection systems, there are also intrusion detection systems that can be deployed on the pipelines. And those will come back into the second pivot of that three-pronged approach. The second pivot is that you need to have a command and control center which receives all the information from the various pipelines around the country. And from that command and control center, somebody is able to monitor what is going on. And then the third pivot, very important third pivot, is that you then must have a rapid response system, which enables the command and control center to immediately activate the nearest security outfit to that point where you have gotten a feedback that an action is about to happen or is happening. These three must work together. Now, because of the fact that at times there is the issue of compromise, one of the things that we recommended in the paper that we then sent up to the Minister of Petroleum at that time was that this command and control center should not be manned only by the security agencies, but should have industry representatives, government security representatives, and then Department of State Security. This is very important. And I want to explain why we made that recommendation. It came out of my personal experience. When I was the managing director of Port Harcourt Refinery, some years before I became the GED, at that time I came over from Nigeria LNG, where I had, constructed 3 trains, during the height of the militancy. There was so much, the period that Dennis talked about, 2006, 2007, height of militancy. It was a tough period. And we were getting feedback. And the Department of State Security was very, very useful in helping us get feedback on what was going on. Okay. So, and when I became MD of Port Harcourt Refinery, we had joint task force that was deployed on the 7-kilometer pipeline between the refinery and the export point where we were exporting products. You remember I told you that when Port Harcourt Refinery was commissioned in 1989, we were exporting products. Not only were we producing, we were exporting. But the export pipeline, 7 kilometers from the refinery through the Okrika community to the jetty, was being attacked at various points. They were stealing products. So JTF was deployed along that 7 kilometers. And almost every 300 yards, you had JTF. And yet we were still having this product theft. So I did nothing. I didn't tell anybody. I invited the DSS chief man to my office and I said, please, can you just collect data for me? Over a period of 3 months, just collect data. That's all. Don't try to interdict anybody, just collect data. And he collected data over 3 months. Time of the day when it happened, at what point it happened, along that 7-kilometer pipeline. And after he had gotten all this data, I then picked my phone and I called the commander of the Joint Task Force. I won't mention the name. And I said to him, General, your men are not helping me. He said, what do you mean? Oh, I said, the people who are along the pipeline, they are there, and yet this theft is going on. And he said, no, we are shocked. I said, no, General. On the 1st of February at 6 a.m., the pipeline at point number so and so was punctured, and products were stolen from our diesel pipeline. On the 15th of February, at such and such a time, at this point, this happened. And by the time I finished ruling out to him the information that was gathered over that 3 months, he said, MD, please, just hold on. I heard him pick his phone and immediately called the colonel who was in charge of the JTF. And he said, he called his name, I won't mention the name. He said, the people who were on duty over this period, these 3 months, immediately arrest all of them and put them in the guard room. And they did that. Do you know that for the next 1 year, we had no theft again on that 7-kilometer pipeline? Why did it happen? Because they knew they were being watched, they knew the information was being gotten, and they knew that there were consequences if they continued. That's why I said there must be that 3-pronged approach. Install devices on the line that will bring the information back to you, and in a command and control center, which must be set up deliberately to receive the information, and then have the ability to activate the rapid response squads who will go out and take action. Thank you very much. This thing is not new. It's been done in different parts of the world. And by the way, in 2013, I presented a paper I was invited by the NAPE, Nigerian Association of Petroleum Explorationists in Lagos. And I presented this paper and I said that the United States of America, up till that time, they had not had actual recorded cases of theft. However, they identified that if crude oil theft or product theft happened in the US, it would cripple the economy. So they took proactive steps to put in place legislation to prevent it, and then they put in place this 3-pronged approach. A 4-star general at the Pentagon was responsible to secure the pipelines around the nation. That is the seriousness that they attached to it. In addition to that, all the technological devices were installed in all the pipelines in the US, coming back to that command and control center in the Pentagon. So we must be serious about this matter. It can be done. There must be the will. Instead of doing it, contracts were given to militants to go and protect the pipeline. It doesn't work. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think I'm going to go straight back to Mr. Festus. You might have some comments on technology deployment and how we might be able to do that.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Joseph. Okay, I'm here to speak to what Mr. Ihao said. technology is key, and it has worked for us. Basically, I'll be speaking to give Nigeria hope that we can still get it right. We have the technology, the FOC, fiber optic cable, connected through our pipeline. And we have a control room where we monitor activities on the right of way. And when there are issues, we raise alarm. Oh, go to point A, go to point B. Sometimes there are spurious alarms as well. We know technology has their own challenges. Yes, but with that, we have a security system that is running 24 hours, monitoring the pipeline. So when there are activities, oh, it may be cows moving around the right of way. Sometimes when you get there, you see cows. We have all of that. We have our flow profile to also monitor losses on the pipeline as well. So I'm here to support how that technology can go a long way to assist us monitor oil theft in our pipelines. And this can only happen when individual companies take charge of their fuel sections as well to ensure that this thing works out for them. Also, the drone as well is one key thing. If you have your personal drone, your security has a drone, they can fly through your right of way and see these areas where there are issues, coming up around your right of way as well. So technology is key. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So while we've talked about the use of technology, right? And I understand that at least it has worked for you. A few questions come to mind. One is, should it not be better to do this as a shared service? That way we can keep the overall cost of deployment low. I mean, given where we are today, our unit operating cost is above $30 a barrel today. And whatever technology solution we find will only layer on additional cost on that. And that will make our break-even point for projects less and less, or more and more higher and less attractive. The projects will become less attractive with more costs being layered on. So whatever solution the industry adopts, I hope, will be one that we will think through and make sure that we minimize the costs. Because at the end of the day, the cost is important. The cost is going up to the level where projects are becoming less and less attractive. So that's just something I thought we should highlight. I will go back to Mr. Macri. Everybody has talked about technology deployment, monitoring systems. Well, all of these things will notify you that there's a problem. But your ability to get to that locus on time, the rapid response capability is key. If it takes you 2 days before you can mobilize to some swamp location, the thieves would have finished and gone away. So the question to you is, where are we today in terms of our ability to respond, and what can we do to make sure and ensure that we have a system that really, really works, something that you can activate and it will respond very quickly to forestall the continual pilage of our resources.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's so exciting listening to professionals talking about, what is going on. And there is an area, in fact, let me summarize that the theft area that we have been discussing today. There are 3 distinct areas of theft that happens in the Nigerian oil industry. Number 1 is the small-time community elements. The small-time community elements who either break the pipeline or, scoop oil and use it for their bonfire stuff and stuff like that. That's one. The second one are the, people who tap the major trunk line. They tap the major trunk line, and this takes some experts who have been in the oil industry. They tap it, and then, of course, send it all the way out, You heard about the recent discovery where about how many 4 or 5 kilometers length of pipeline that was going all the way offshore, and then of course was loading in tankers that go overseas. These tankers are not just little ones. 3 million barrels of oil in them. And they are taking, so it tells you these are not just the local communities that we're talking about. You know, these are major, and these are non-state, you know, non-state actors. They are not part of the NNPC or the oil companies. You know, these are individuals who are on their own. The other day I was with on a platform with the GMD and NPC, and he was also mentioning that he has people threatening his life because they've come to discover certain things, you know. But keep that aside. The third area is the export terminals. Export terminals. And I was lucky, you know, where I have to have, when I was security manager of one of the oil in the IOCs, and of course, we discovered that the export terminals are the major areas where things go out, and then of course, many people are involved. In this particular one, we have even the IOCs who are involved, and then we have people from the NFPC who are involved, and we are losing oil. It will surprise you to know, you are all professionals in this very forum here. It will surprise you to know that Nigeria, till today, AR has talked about metering. We really don't know how much oil Nigeria produces or how much oil we export. And that's where the major theft is happening. So I like to bring this up because we cannot continue to deceive ourselves. Earlier, it has been mentioned here that oil theft is an existential threat to Nigeria because it's our major oil, it's our major revenue earner. And if this is going on and nobody, you know, will come, will brush over it, and nobody is really facing it, it's really sad, because when you look at it, okay, recently you even saw the GMD go down to where the hot tapping of the major trunk line was, you know, the NCTL was happening. And what did they say? Shell has started to produce their 400,000 barrels a day, and everybody has come back to normal. You know, export is going on. Who are the culprits? No arrest has been made. No prosecution has taken place. So it is normal. Life goes on. So what are we going to do about this? I think we'll talk more about this when we come to the solution part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Macri. Well, if I, you know, you kind of hit hard on the industry. I wouldn't say that we don't know what we produce and we don't know what we export. I wouldn't say that. Metering is a problem, but remember that what we're talking about is field metering. So fiscalization is a slightly different thing, and to the best of my knowledge, fiscal metering is ongoing. But you know, it is what it is. I think everything comes down to, I mean, there has been discussions about, you know, field ensuring that we have field metering across our operations, the issue has always been cost, because most of these facilities were built in the 70s, and they paid very little attention to metering. There are platforms that were actually built without any form of metering at all. So you will need to go back there to retrofit metering, and that will cut quite a bit. So we have, on one hand, the need to do things right, and the other hand, lack of funds to do things right. The industry right now does not have the resources to do most of what needs to be done. That is a fact. So it's a balance. We need to find a way to at least continue to survive as an industry while we address our challenges, one step at a time. So I will go back to Abdul. He has hinted on something. I participated in a study 3 years ago for some entities where we kind of looked at crude theft and we categorized it. So we have what we call the point of origin theft, which is everything that happens before the export terminal. And then we have the point of export theft. And most people think that, yes, we've had point of export theft for as long as we can remember. There is a study done in 2018 that estimates that we were losing about 50,000 barrels of oil every day at the terminals. So I will go to Abdul, who I hope you can help us understand exactly how that happens at the terminals.
Thanks, thanks.
I'm not putting you on the spot.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. No, I think maybe before I come to your more specific question, and I can appreciate, actually, I like the emotions around this, because I think we need to, we need to have the energy to combat this. But also, I think it's important that that we also separate, facts from perception, because it's important. Otherwise, if we mix everything up together, and then we might be misdiagnosing the issue. So I just think, there's a balance that we should try to establish. Yes, there's uncertainty, and you hear numbers, all over the place. But the industry also has the capacity to do a lot of things right, to measure things right. I mean, the resource constraint you mentioned is real, yeah. So sometimes some of this are expensive, but if you now compare how much you're losing, in many cases it's worth spending that extra to fix the problem. But I just thought to share that sentiment. I think it's important we balance that emotion with with hard facts, so that we can really focus on the real problem. More specifically to your question around the terminals, the way the terminals are designed, at the terminal itself, if you think about the accounting, the terminaling and the fiscalization process, at the terminal itself is extremely difficult to take, and I won't say impossible, but it's extremely difficult to take product out of the terminal, because there's a single line out of that terminal to a ship. There's also a process where you reconcile what you've taken out of the tanks in the terminal with what's on the ship. And there's a margin within which, you are allowed, to pass a cargo or not. And you've got a series of signatories to that, from the company representatives to NNPC representatives to customs to NUPRC, everybody is signing up there. Now, it's not impossible, but you agree with me that it will take a lot of collusion for all of those agencies to continually collude, on a daily basis. Having said that, the reconciliation we focus on is between what's going out of the tankers, what's on the ship. Is it possible that there are lines on the export line post the meter? It's possible. Yeah, so some of those losses may come from there. And to the number you quoted, 55,000 barrels per day. Now, if And I don't know when that report was made.
2018. So this was for the period 2018.
2018.
Yeah.
And what was our rough export volumes then? Do you remember?
Maybe 1.8, something in that range.
Okay, so and 55,000 barrels is a lot of oil. You know, it's no doubt about that. But if you put that on 1.8 million, you get, I think, about 3%. Is it? Which is outside of what we typically accept for terminal factors. So typically we try to stay at 98 or 99%. Anything lower than 98% is considered to be more than just metering, you know, and other losses. So I would probably attribute part of that to possibly metering, which is not unusual. But like I said, indeed, after the meter on the export line, you know, it's possible that sometimes you have illegal connections as well. That will be my, this will be my thoughts.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the whole idea why I threw this to you was so that you explain I understand the process and the terminals, right? But it's difficult for people who are not in the industry to understand the number of agencies that have to, you know, approve a cargo before it can move off. So it's something we need to. I think the industry needs to open up a bit more
and educate.
And educate the public on what really goes on.
Yeah.
Because I remember going to, I think it was at, I remember speaking at a public event and people levied these allegations. And I tried to explain to them that it's not, I do not imagine that anybody can put a ship at a terminal, load and move off the way it's been said.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of
indeed, Joe. Maybe just because back in September, I actually hosted the now chief upstream investment officer, who was former GGM for NAPIMS. I hosted him at the Bonny terminal together with a wide range of media, representatives, at the terminal, and we took them through the terminal. We took them through the fiscalization process, and just like you said, I think the industry, in our typical way, sometimes we are very aloof, right? And we assume that everybody is on the same page with us. So I think that indeed there's a lot more we need to do just to create that awareness, so that we can channel the effort where the real problems are, rather than chasing everything.
Yeah. So exactly? If you bring in 100 media men into a room, that would be the popular sentiment that everybody is stealing. So, we go back to the point of origin theft, which is what happens before the terminal all the way to the wellhead. And I think that's the one that is killing us today. That's the bulk of our challenge. Depending on who you listen to, different companies have reported different numbers, right? And it's conceivable, it's understandable as well that that would be the case, because the terrain is different. If you're in a very difficult terrain, chances are that people can, tap into your line forever and keep sucking, and there's nothing really you can do. My question is, from everything we've seen, there is the small players, the people who have the cooking stove, right? However, there's not enough cooking stove in the Delta, for instance, to process 100,000 barrels of oil a day. However you look at it. So the bulk of this theft are people who have the skill set, which is the industrial scale, people who are actually exporting crude, selling crude to some rackets out there, international rackets. I guess my question here will be, and I've made this point at a previous listing, can we have something like the Kimberley process for blood diamond? Can we build some international consensus around illicit crude, right? Because like Abdul did mention, if there's no market for it, right, it wouldn't be happening at the scale it is happening. So if we can do anything from the market side to basically remove that demand for illicit crude internationally, maybe we would have achieved something. And I'll go to Ogatoni here. What can we do as a country, maybe rally around other countries to see if we can build some consensus to see how we can take away the demand, the international demand for black crude, if you will. Is that something that the country should pioneer or push?
Indeed, I agree with you, Joseph. Interestingly, some years ago, a professor at the University of Lagos, Professor Alfred Susu, did some research work in which he came up with a proposition for fingerprinting of crude. So, and for that work, which was very original work, he was awarded the Nigeria Prize for Science that year. And it made it possible for you to take a sample of crude on a ship and determine where that crude was coming from. So we can actually do that in the same way in which the blood diamonds was attacked in Congo, in DRC, and so on. We can do the same in Nigeria because it has gotten that serious. Survival as a nation is in danger if this sort of thing continues. A lot of the insecurity that we see in our country today is because there are people who have massive amounts of money with which they are carrying on very illegal things and dangerous things. And they are prepared to spend that money to protect their evil enterprise. I had a friend many years ago who was the MD of the Côte d'Ivoire refinery, SIR refinery. And he told me that somebody came and offered to sell him 2 million barrels of crude oil for him to process in his refinery at a price which was less than 70% of the going price at that time. And he said to himself, this cannot be legal. Something is wrong here. And because he was somebody of conscience, he refused to accept the offer. Of course, it would have made his margin much better in his refinery, but he decided against it. If we can carry out an international lobby and get people to join an effort to stigmatize those who engage in this illegal trade, then we might have a chance to succeed. This has worked in other initiatives. For example, I've been involved in an initiative to improve the quality of petroleum products that are sold in Africa as a whole. And we got a Dutch NGO who wrote an article and carried out campaigns in Holland against what they call dirty diesel. And that put so much pressure on the big traders. You know the big traders, I don't need to call their names, but the big traders were put on pressure. And that pressure resulted in them gradually reducing this dirty diesel that they were bringing to Nigeria. And legislation had to be put in place to make it illegal for you to sell such poor quality diesel in any of the West African nations. So we need to put our house in order. Let there be better governance in our country. Let us, our government, show that it is really serious about tackling this menace, because at the end of the day, if there is no consequence to these persons who are big time thieves, if there's no consequence, they will continue to do it. I'm sorry, my personal view is that it was not really the right thing to bomb or destroy that ship that was alleged to have been arrested recently carrying stolen crude oil. It would have been better to impound that ship, take it to a safe location. It becomes an evidence in prosecution of those who are involved, rather than just destroying it and then in the process causing a lot of environmental pollution, because that's what resulted. So we must be serious about putting together this international action to discourage this illegal trade in crude oil stolen from Nigeria? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that's, that will help, because essentially it will kind of take away the demand, the international demand, and then we can now start dealing with the local demand, which to a large extent has to do with supply situation domestically. Now, you did highlight the issue about the standards. I know you worked on the AFRI-5, and I sit back and I ask myself, so Nigeria committed, I think it's January 2021 or 2020, we are supposed to have, so we are supposed to be in a regime where we are cleaning out the quality of our fuels, and then we are busy doing bonfire. What can we do? So on one hand, we have commitment to clean up the fuel that we use to make sure it's low sulfur. And on the other hand, we have people who are basically selling openly fuel that does not meet even the current standards that we're trying to phase out. What do we do?
Can I answer that question very quickly, Joe?
Yes.
The legislation was passed, and it involved a lot of effort. I remember I sat down with the then Minister of Environment, Amina Mohammed, who is now the Under-Secretary General in the United Nations, and she committed to the initiative. And a month later, she invited all the ministers of petroleum and the ministers of environment in the West African sub-region, and the meeting was held in Abuja. She invited me to make a presentation. We made a presentation, and it was identified that the first thing that needed to be done was to revise the legislation. The legislation was then revised. The next thing was to implement it. It was implemented in Ghana. Côte d'Ivoire started the process to implement. However, it was not implemented in Nigeria for the simple reason that there was a cost impact to implementing it in Nigeria. And the cost impact was very small at that time, between 3 to 5 naira per liter. But the government said, since we are paying subsidy, we don't want to bear this additional burden. And subsidy was the single resistance that made that implementation not to happen in Nigeria for PMS. Thank God we implemented the 50 ppm for diesel, but for PMS, it has not been implemented. Now, the real thing is that the DPR made a rule, they gave a directive that by October 2021, it was going to become mandatory for all marketers to meet 50 ppm on PMS. Unfortunately, the PIA was passed, DPR was dissolved, and that directive was never implemented, because by the time October came, DPR didn't exist anymore. You now had a new entity, and that new entity is yet to implement it, because the marketers have still kept arguing about subsidy being a disincentive to implementation, because somebody has to bear the cost. So this is why, when we look at the distortions that are happening in our economy, we are talking about a loss of somewhere between 400, 500,000 barrels per day. And now we are told that the crude oil, the proceeds from crude oil sales is simply being used to finance the subsidy. So we as a nation are losing, not to talk about the environmental damage. So we need to bite the bullet and do what is best for our nation so that we can go beyond this. And then the government must take the bold decision to disentangle our economy from these people who are holding it in a stranglehold, because we must make progress. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I think we are getting close to the end of this. So let's talk about consequence management. So obviously, it just seems like, to the best of my knowledge, nobody has been punished. Nobody has been caught stealing crude. Nobody who is supposed to watch the wellhead has been fired for not watching it. It's a bazaar out there. How do we go about this? I mean, there has to be, to start with, somebody responsible. And I know we have the JTF, we have all these entities out there. What should we be doing with respect to consequence management? What can the industry do to get government to at least, wake up? Let me start with Mr. Macri, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I think that is where it is. When a crime is committed and there are no consequences, then it's not a law. And then, of course, many people will go ahead and do what they want to do because they feel that nothing will happen anyway. So it is very, very important. Number one, there are things we can put in place to make sure that this does not happen. Like I said earlier, we discovered a tapping of a major pipeline. And of course, the security agencies are there, the government officials are there, and then of course, there is no arrests, there are no prosecution, and then of course, it's business as usual. So what do? We have to, number one, put the laws in place. I think somebody has mentioned it here, that we need to have special laws in there, whereby when people are caught, we will not look at whose ox is God and then, of course, prosecute them. Like we said, this is an existential threat to Nigerian nation. And if we don't do anything about it and play keeps glove about it, it's not going to work. Number two, I think we should try to, somebody was asking, why don't we use the Saudi Arabia model? Aramco has come up with a high-tech control room whereby all drop of oil from Saudi Arabia to all of the exports they have in that country is monitored. I'm very sure many of you have seen that control room. How much will it cost us to install something like that? Or will corruption allow us to even install it? Because that's where we have the problem. We can install it, but how are we going to do it? Engineer Antonio have mentioned it earlier, where you have to have security agents there. Most of the military people that are sent there lobby themselves to be sent there because they believe that if they reach there in 6 months, they'll buy a car. So I've worked with them. I know what is going on there. So what are we going to do about it? You cannot fight a single battle. So if it's an industry effort to make sure that this does not happen. So we need intruder detection systems, a quick response, because that's another one. We can put all kinds of systems, drones and everything. I realized that when I was looking after the NCTL, we can see somebody trying to bust the pipeline some 3, 4, 5 kilometers away. Before we can, at 2 a.m., before we can mobilize, what do you call it, the Mopol and all those people to get in there. By the time we get there, they are gone. So response is a very, very important situation where we cannot, answer this particular question. So why don't we create an exclusion zone? In many countries, we did it in Bonny. When we are bringing out the LNG, we moved the whole town away to create that space for the LNG. Why can't we create an exclusion zone for our oil industry? Move the towns away, allow the place to exist, or move them far away from the ROW so that any time, any intrusion that is getting in there, we know that, yes, this is happening and we can respond appropriately. So I think these are all solutions. The solutions are not far-fetched. We can't reinvent the wheel, but we can do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You raised an important issue, which is, do we have problem with bridges on our right of way? I'm not sure where that is, but I think I will, let me go through quickly. Mr. Adebowale, what are your thoughts?
Thank you very well for this opportunity. I know we've said a lot, and for me, as the manager of pipelines on the right of way, most of what we have said, most of the solution that we have proffered, the truth of the matter is that for now, it's a moving target. When it comes to command and control center, I am aware NNPC Limited has a command and control center that has to do with this issue of monitoring our crude line. It might not be holistic for now. That's why I said it's a moving target. We've started such. Also, the issue of rapid response. I could remember most of this information are what's not supposed to be shared publicly, but I could remember there was a point also we tested and used a drone presently as we even speak. Yeah, this is the level of it. So I don't want to say much. So most of the solutions that we are providing here are presently being deployed. Also, when we talk about metering, to the best of my knowledge, very few lines are now having metering facilities being installed. I know at a much bigger forum, the GCO will be making most of this information available to the public. So we are working. That's why I keep saying it is a moving target, not so gloomy as it's been expressed. Since the GCO came on board, he has been doing a lot of things in respect of most of these issues. But we must get something clear. The right of way transverses a lot of creeks, land. Will we stop people from going to their farms? We're going to stop people from moving from one place to another, because in the process of moving from one point to another, they crisscross most of these pipelines right of way. So we need to manage this vis-a-vis operating in the environment. So in doing that, in terms of technology, we keep saying leak technology, intrusion detection. There are some of our lines that you have this. There are some of our lines that there are rapid response on ground, which we are using. Most of these things are not shared in the public. But the reality is that because of the way it's biting hard on the nation, it becomes a topical issue. So we need to manage what the industry is doing vis-a-vis getting to where we want to get to. So that's why I say we are working, it's a progress kind of a thing. We are working from one point. We've gone from where we were before, where most of the lines had no lacked units, measuring device, but some lines are being picked up and measuring device are being installed so that we can meter and know what has passed, what is moved from one point to another. It's just that it's not holistic as we speak. We need to marry the availability of funds, scarce resources, with what we need to achieve. That's just what I need to move forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Festus, your thoughts?
Okay, yes, thank you. Okay, I'd like to react a little towards Adebowale's thoughts. Yes, metering, accounting has its role in taking records on what we produce. Yes, we can have that record, but that's enough. That is not enough to stop oil theft. It's not still enough because that is for our own records. What about those that goes by the way to still vandalize this pipe, siphon this crude? Having your own record does not stop them. And talking about the digital control system, yes, it's good. But the region where all this technology is deployed, the understanding, the sincerity, integrity, the respect for public facility, the mindset of the individual within that region also matters. We can have all of these in place and things don't really work, things don't work for us. Now, basically on the security part, the emergency response is the major thing that we should be looking out for. When we detect all of this, how long does it take us? That was why I think brought my idea to us. We have our own security, despite all of this. Our security response is within 30 minutes. We manage about 52 kilometers pipeline. And response within this region is like 30 minutes. So when we raise an alarm, the security are there, we take care of them. Immediately, they must respond at that point in time and give us feedback. So our focus, I think, my suggestion, my thought here, is for us to channel energy into our emergency response. Because the community members are all the state of the economy has made people begin to compromise. Even the security men are compromising. How do we checkmate our security officials? How do we checkmate our government officials as well? So emergency response is key. Secondly, is the law. There needs to be an enforcement and penalty. Whoever is caught, what happens to that individual? 2 years ago, 3 years ago precisely, we caught about three vandals into our people that caught into our pipeline. Our JTF caught them. We handed them to the police. But to our greatest surprise, about 3 weeks later, we saw those individuals still in that community, walking around. What happened to those individuals? They were caught and handed over to the police. 3 weeks later, we saw them still in the community, moving around. So what is the government doing on this? What is the main action on this particular thing? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we've dealt with that. So we need the technology to help us to monitor in real time the assets. We need a command and control center that will pull all this together, and then of course we need a rapid response system. What I'm hearing is the NNPC has a command and control center. I don't know if the entire industry is tied into this. So it might be an opportunity for some collaboration because NNPC is everywhere anyway. It's in all the assets. So it would be nice to have some integration of whatever you're doing or the individual companies are doing with what NNPC has. We need an integrated system that will work. And then of course you need a rapid response mechanism that will respond in minutes, not hours, not days, that will get to the locals as quickly as possible. And then of course, if you do all that right and capture some people or arrest them, you need consequence management. I think these are the major critical elements that we have been identified today. It makes no sense that people will do stuff and nothing happens. I mean, we need to strengthen the consequence management framework. That brings us to the issue of the legislative framework. I did hear somebody here talk about special laws. Do we have sufficient enough laws and provisions in them to deal with this issue? Are there gaps in the current legal framework that will warrant a special law for this? Or do we have enough laws today to address this issue? I'll start with Mr. Macri.
Okay, thank you. I'm not a lawyer, and I really don't know where, what are the laws, but we know that there are laws that are, against theft. But I would suggest that new laws are promulgated that will take care of this, because it's a national problem. It's a national security problem. And you say, just like we have the PIA now, there should be some kind of consequences in there for people that are trying to impinge on our national, assets. I know national infrastructures are being protected one way or the other, but let there be laws. Besides the laws, let there be action about arrest and prosecution. Even if we don't have particular laws on petroleum engineering, or petroleum resources, there should be laws that can prosecute, arrest and prosecute, and let people know. Because when it is a situation where nobody is arrested, nobody is prosecuted, it's like, let's go do it. Because I know, I have experiences where, some pipeline, people who are busting the pipelines were looked for. I called my colleagues in the DSS to pursue them, and they were running all over the place, hiding, begging, sending people to go and beg and all the rest, And after a while, because that's our problem in this country, after a while, everybody forgets and nothing happens again, and then they come out, So it is very, very important. Let's arrest these people, prosecute them, make it a public show, so that it will be a deterrent to others. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Abdul, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, thanks. I think I concur a lot of what Mr. Macri said, but I think if I link it back to what Engineer Tony mentioned as well, I really liked the US analogy, because I think this, if you ask me personally, I think there's a need to declare a state of emergency in this particular sector, and then have emergency laws. And then when you achieve some sort of stability, you can then, pair that back into regular laws. But at the moment, I think applying the laws as we have them using the existing structures is going to be very difficult to have the kind of impact you're looking for. So we need senior level, at the very highest level, either in the defense sector or at the presidency, senior level coordination that will take charge of this, special purpose vehicle, if you like. And then when this situation improves, then you can you can normalize things. And that's on the technical side. On the non-technical side as well, because there needs to be a bit of a carrot and stick. And this statement might be a bit controversial because of the retail nature of the problem as well. Because so many of our people are involved, maybe at a small scale. We have to think of the social aspect as well. How do we create or improve the socioeconomic environment that would dissuade these people from participating, so that we can focus on the real criminal elements? Because otherwise, you might just declare war on your people, and nobody wants to do that. So there are some cases where people have been forced into this. How do we isolate that so that we can focus on the criminal elements? And then lastly, you asked, in terms of SPE. I think this is one very good step the SPE is taking. I think having this conversation, bringing this level of experience to share thoughts. If you codify that, then engage the operators by OPTS, engage NMPC as well, with recommendations, and then follow through, through the various companies, because most of the companies are also working with NMPC on this. So, for example, we have been working with NMPC on the TMP, for example, and the command center that was referred to is something that I'm aware of, something that we have people that have visited from our company. I have to admit that I don't know if other IOCs are also keyed in, but that's something that everybody needs to be keyed into, and then SP can continue the advocacy, using the platform, leveraging the membership, to continue to make this front and center, until we solve it.
Very good, excellent. You just took my next question away, which was what I call the crude oil theft food chain or value chain. Well, depending on how you look at it. So there are people involved in that process. There are tanker operators. There are all sorts of people who, might think that they are engaged in some legitimate endeavor.
Yeah.
They are not the real guys, but they provide services to those guys. So what you're saying is, yes, in trying to address this, we should equally look at how we might be able to redirect those entities away from what is clearly an illegal activity. So I've been thinking about this, right? So we've talked about all the terrible things that this represents for nation, for the environment, for our security and all that. And I kept asking myself, is there nothing good about this? And I think I found the answer. I think there's something good about this. And that good news is, I thought about Watersmith and a few other companies that have decided to refine in situ, right? So if my export evacuation route has been compromised repeatedly, should I not think of refining my crude right there at the field, right? And a few companies have traded this part, which in my view is the right solution we should have implemented in the 70s, right? We shouldn't have engaged on this primary commodity export business, right? We should have, as a nation, thought about exporting only secondary products of crude. I can guarantee if we had followed that route, we wouldn't be where we are today. So that kind of came back to me, and I thought about the Kolomani River work, the fact that it's an integrated project, which is good. It means these guys have no problem with crude theft, right? They're going to refine the crude in situ, sell the products to a region that really is underserved. So the market for refined product is right there. So I'm thinking, okay, should at least the independents, maybe not the shells, right? The independents and the small guys who have gotten into the space. Maybe the good news is that this is an opportunity for them to rethink their business models to in-situ processing of crude to products. And then we can now start talking about how we export the products or how we use it domestically. So I will go to Oga Anthony for your thoughts. Do you think that's the good news out of all this?
Joseph, this is really very interesting. That's an interesting perspective. In actual fact, going forward, it may indeed be a solution. We are all familiar with the impact of climate change and all the discussions that are going on at an international level about discouraging further investment in fossil fuel discoveries, production, and so on. And the developed world, especially the US and Europe, are now putting pressure on funding sources not to support investment in further production in the third world. This has implications for our future. I was invited by the Academy of Engineering, of which I'm a fellow, to make a projection of what we should start thinking about in the future. And one of the suggestions I made, listen to it very carefully. If the moves that are going on internationally succeed, it means that the demand for our crude will disappear. if the demand for our crude disappears, then that means that our upstream sector as well as our downstream sector will be in jeopardy. And our ability to support our national development will disappear. So the fact that we have a local demand will generate a demand for our crude. So if, for example, I mean, we are 200 million people, for goodness sake, right now. Some think we are already above that figure. So we have a big market. We have, as at the time that I left office, the aggregate national demand for petroleum products amounted to about 650,000 barrels per day equivalent refining. And we projected that by 2020, it would have increased to 830,000 barrels per day equivalent, okay? Now, many people are not aware of a lot of work which has been going on in NNPC from the early 70s when it was set up. They were always projecting forward to determine what our national consumption would be. And that was the basis on which new refineries were being built so that we keep in step with our national demand. So let me paint a picture. If Dangote refinery, 650,000 barrels per day comes on stream, if the existing 4 refineries are brought back into operation, 445,000 barrels per day, add that together, that already gives you 1.05 million, at least approximately, of crude oil demand. Now, when crude is supplied to those refineries, they pay for it at the same world market price. It's not given to them free. So in actual fact, it guarantees that there's a continuing demand for at least 1 million barrels of our crude. Right now, our production is just about 1.1 million. That's the real actual production right now. So if we can get our acts together and have these local demands, and we produce to meet the local demand, we support continuing activity in the upstream, and then we'll have activity in the downstream. That will help us as a nation. So indeed, Joseph, I think you are right. Let's do what has happened in Brazil. Brazil had a capacity to produce 2.3 million barrels per day. And listen, they had capacity to refine 2.3 million barrels per day. This was as at 2013. I led a delegation to Brazil in December of that year. So I'm talking facts. The entire production of Brazil was refined in Brazil, met their local demand, and the balance was exported. They only imported 300,000 barrels per day. Why did they do that? Brazilian crude is not good for producing lubricants. So they practically swapped 300,000 of their production for 300,000 they imported so that they could produce all the lubes that they required. So essentially, they were meeting all of their demand. Nigeria should meet its demand rather than exporting all our jobs and work outside. Let us encourage the continued existence of the upstream as well as the functioning of the downstream.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we are at least what they call the home run right now. I will let's just take one word from each of the panelists. Clearly, it's not all bad news. We are at the point where, especially the independents, can see this as an opportunity to rejig their business models to one that actually will help us reindustrialize the country. Because if we start to process the crude and the derivatives from the crude, you will build a domestic petrochemical industry in short order. So there's opportunity right there to do that and keep the jobs here. Like Oga Tony has said, when we export the crude, we essentially exported the jobs with it as well, and the economic growth that should have happened here. So just a minute per participant. Mr. Macri, please.
Okay, thank you very much. There are just two things. Engineer Tony has just said about Dangote refinery, but I refer back to what he said earlier, where the problem the refineries were having was the supply of crude. So in fact, with that concept, I don't know how many, you know, whether the provision of crude to Dangote refinery is going to be consistent and continuous. That's an area we have to look at, you know. But that being said, on the final run, you know, what I would say is that we've not talked about a very, very important element in this crude theft or preservation thing, and that is the communities. These communities are very, very important. And, you know, I remember when we used to give just, you know, we share the pipeline to the different communities. Okay, from this 2 kilometers is belonging to this community, you take care of it. And then the next 3 kilometers is like that all the way down. But we discovered that, of course, there are even people against that who will come and attack those community people. So, but we need to involve the communities, because these pipelines, you know, like the pipeline, I think Adebo said it, we cannot create a proper exclusion zone to isolate all this infrastructure. So we're going to pass through the communities. And if we're going to pass through the communities, it's important that we try and, you know, involve those communities. Otherwise, you know, we still have a problem there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Point well taken. I'll come to you, Mr. Adebowale. 1 minute, please. Don't be like Mr. Macri.
Thank you very much. We've talked a lot here. We concentrate more on crude oil theft. We've looked at a new chain to be provided if those are refined locally. If it's refined locally, definitely we need to move them from one point to another. There and then, the issue of theft of even the refined product come into play. So the reality is that because we are a player both in the crude and in the white product environment, we are experiencing the same issue of crude oil theft, even in the white product environment. So even if we say we are creating a new market or a new value chain, let's refine locally, we have a new problem that we must tackle, which is also the theft of the white products. So the underlying thing I want each and every one of us to understand is that what is the driving force for oil theft? If we are able to, as much as possible, minimize the issue that might drive oil theft, whether the new chain that we're going to produce, the new market chain that we're going to produce, there and then the issue of oil theft, whether it is crude or white products, will be reduced to the barest minimum. That's just what I need to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Festus, please.
Okay, yes, thank you. Okay, just as we said, transportation is still the key thing. Yes, even if we set up our local refineries, modular refineries, moving products from one point to another will remain a challenge. So my contribution to the transportation industry, the pipeline industry, is to begin to look out for a better technology like the HDD technology, whereby we restrict the access to the pipeline, a deeper, lay your pipeline at a deeper depth, whereby it will be more difficult for vendors to get access to them. So let's begin to introduce the HDD technology in laying down our pipes. And I'll also suggest to the industry, let's encourage few pipeline companies to come in, whereby they take charge of moving these products, take charge of your production. Let them take this responsibility. Let them come in and invest into this laying of this HDD pipe from one point to the market source where they can sell off. And that will also minimize the issue of oil theft, either the pure crude or the refined products. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Abdul, the last word.
Well, thank you. I think thank you for the opportunity. I think many appreciations to SPE and to you, Joe, for a well-facilitated session. I think, like I said, this is an existential problem. I'm happy that we're discussing it. We articulated potential technical solutions and also non-technical aspects that we need to look at. I think it provides an opportunity for us to drive a step change in the solution on so many fronts. Like you said, we've taken such a beating in terms of what we can monetize, environment and so forth. But maybe it's also as an opportunity to drive radical change, across the industry. Both like Mr. Adebowale mentioned, both in the upstream but also downstream. So I want to encourage the SPE to continue, sustain this, even step up this effort in playing its own role in making sure that we attack this problem so that we can freely and comfortably exploit and enjoy the resources that God has bestowed on our country, because it's every Nigerian has the right to be able to do that. So I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abdul. And Ogatoni.
Thank you very much again, SPE, for this symposium. It has been very, very engaging, and I think it's quite timely. Closing words. We have said a lot. I think Joseph has captured the main takeaways. I want to add to that by saying that the PIA has a host community provisions, which are important. I hope that they will be implemented diligently so that the host communities feel that they have a stake in protecting these facilities, because it's important. You cannot rule them out, okay? If we give them a sense of belonging in feeling that they have a stake, then they will protect the facilities. The other thing is that the laws have to be strengthened, okay? There has to be a combination of new laws that will provide serious consequences for people who continue to engage in this, as well as diligent prosecution, with emphasis again on diligent prosecution, so that people are made to answer for the things that they do. If all of these things are done, then we stand a chance of stopping this menace. Because let's not forget, this is indeed a challenge to the future of our nation. Thank you very much. And thanks again, SP, for inviting me.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. I think you guys have done a great deal of work here. You've essentially unpacked crude theft and in all its ramifications. In summary, I think what I'm taking from here is that SPE still has a lot of work to do. We're not just going to stop at talking. We need to help galvanize the industry with OPTS, IPPG, NNPC, whoever needs to be in the room to say this is what the industry can do. At least have that conversation before we tend to think security. Every time we mention, we think of people in khaki. There's always that mental state that, oh, it's soldiers. I think the industry first needs to sit down and agree on what its role will be in providing a solution to what clearly is not just existential threat to the industry, but to the country itself. So SPE, thank you for the opportunity. I know I think we took 5 more minutes above the regulation time, but please, thank you. When I was called and said, will you moderate? I said, man, I thought I was going to be the keynote speaker, but at some point I said, maybe they have a reason for asking me to moderate because they don't want me to share my own thoughts, which is great. So, and it's a safe place to be. I thank you all for your time. I thank you, Alessia, for keeping me up. 5 minutes is not too bad, I guess. So let's do the work that we need to do to save our industry and country. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you
You're
so much to the panelists. Thank you, Mr. Joe Mwakwe. Thank you so much. It's been a really engaging discussion. Like you mentioned, a lot has been unpacked with regards to crude oil value chain, unfortunately, within Nigeria and of course the industry as a whole. And series of solutions have been put together with the different themes. I really like the part of the detection system, the command center, rapid response, consequence management, and of course, community engagement. These are really key areas that, like you all have mentioned, if we are able to address and tackle this, we will, to an extent, bring this menace to under control. And like the charge that has been given to us by most of the panelists, we hope that SPE will take this, not just end at this session. We'll see how we can engage the right stakeholders with the recommendations that have been put forward here to tackle this menace. So thank you so much again. I know a couple of questions were asked in the Q&A box. And looking through the Q&A box, I believe most of them were addressed in the course of the discussion. So thank you so much, audience, as well, for such an engaging discussion. Without much further ado, based on time, I would like to hand over to Mr. B.E., who will be taking us through on the vote of thanks and subsequent announcement. B.E. is the program's chairperson for SPE Lagos section. B.E., the floor is yours. Hello, B. We can barely hear you. Could you come closer to the mic?
Can you confirm you can hear me, Alessi?
Yes, we hear you now.
All right, thank you. All right, so this has been a very engaging session, and I believe we've had so much to learn. Personally, I've learned a lot, and I think a panel of experts that really did a great job really explaining and unpacking this this crude oil theft in Nigeria. So I'd like to start by thanking our panelists, Engineer Tony Bugwe, Engineer Festus Tiger, Engineer Adebowale Alaode, and also Mr. Dennis Amakri Mohen. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing from your expertise. Also would like to thank our keynote speaker AR. Thank you for always delivering what we call on you. And to our moderator, our past council chair, Engineer Joe Wakwe, thank you so much for the excellent moderation and for helping to put this all in shape. I think it was a soup that you helped us really package very well, and I think it was delicious at the end of the day. So a big thank you to all our panelists. I also like to thank everyone who joined us today. Thank you for joining, and thank you for for listening and for the several questions that were shared. I also like to thank SPE Council Chair, who also graciously joined us and gave an address at the start of this session. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us and for graciously supporting us in this journey. Also like to thank the our own section chair, Mrs. Priscilla Ewe, for the excellent leadership and also for putting this together as the chief host. And also to thank the people who are actually in charge of ensuring that this event was successful. To our special projects chair, Chimere Alim, and his co-chair, Asana Salami, for the excellent job they've done to deliver this symposium. It was really insightful. Several information was shared, and I'm sure this will be referenced going forward. And like it's been said, we will not stop here. We'll also engage further and ensure that we have further and robust discussions with everybody in the industry to ensure that this is put to bed and we can focus on more important things that can get us also to where we should be as an industry and also as a nation. With that, I would move straight to the announcements. We have upcoming activities in SP Lagos section. First is coming up on the 8th of December, we'll be having a webinar on building a resilient energy workforce of the future. We'll be joined by Susan Owens, who will be giving this presentation. This is in collaboration with the Warri section, and so Lagos section and Warri section are going to be having this special D&I events together. Also, we have upcoming our end of year children's party and back to school gift boxes that we plan to give to to students who will be resuming school next year. But basically, this is targeted at at children who otherwise not have an excellent holiday. So we are planning to give them a befitting Christmas and end of year party and also give them some back to school gift boxes. This will be taking place on Saturday, December 10th, 2022, and that's I believe two Fridays from now, Saturdays, I mean 2 Saturdays from now. And so for each child, it's about 10,000 naira to sponsor them. We hope that you can also help sponsor a child to have a wonderful holiday. And if you cannot sponsor up to 10,000, we still will appreciate any amount you can sponsor to co-sponsor one child. Okay, if we can go to the next one. So we also have the Own a Scholarship Award that will be coming up shortly, next year. We're hoping to give about 100,000 to each undergraduates, also 50,000 to STEM students in secondary school, and also to the female undergraduates, we want to give them 100,000 naira each. We have excellent feedback from some of the students who have given these awards to in the past, and we hope that you can at least help sponsor a scholarship for a university or undergraduate student and also a secondary school student to have an excellent time in school while they are able to focus on their studies and not think of cash to either complete their project or get to feed while in school. So we appreciate if you can help sponsor one undergraduate or a secondary school with 100,000 for them to have an excellent academic year. Also, we'd like to remind you to renew your SP membership. We have annual renewal for our SP membership. At the end of the year, several campaigns have been going out for people to renew membership. So if you're not renewed your membership, please you can contact any of all the people displayed on the screen. Our membership chair, LSA, who was the moderator for this event, who was the MC. You can reach out to her. And you can also reach out to other people. So this is a table showing the upcoming activities and events that we have, the diversity and inclusion event, the Lagos community event, the Own a Scholarship, and then the membership registration renewals. We also have a board meeting for the SP Lagos section that will be coming up virtually on December 15th, 2022. And this is where we have meetings where we'll plan activities for this Lagos section. Okay, I think that is it for me. Thank you so much for joining, and please engage with us on several social media handles. We're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, and we're also on YouTube. You can also watch on demand this symposium. It will be on our YouTube page. You can go to our YouTube page to watch some of the other programs that we've had in the past. Thank you very much for joining. And with that, I think we've come to the end of the symposium. Special thanks again to our panelists, to our keynote speaker, and also to our moderator, and to everyone who has joined us today. We thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.